Welcome to another lore video. Shinrarta Desra was defended with the community goal reaching 70%, but the ability to earn new combat bonds for it stopped after the weekend when the war progress for the system reached 100%. The rest of the week was for anyone to hand in any bonds they hadn't redeemed yet, and we wondered what was going to happen with that, but from FDev's point of view, once the war progress reached 100%, they clearly thought we'd done enough, whether the community goal was finished or not, so that obviously didn't matter. They just set a higher target so that it wouldn't be exceeded before the war progress reached 100, and then once it was there, done deal. Spend the rest of the week handing in your combat bonds, pick up your rewards this Thursday, which everybody has done, so anyone who took part has got some heat sinks, I think they get, as well as the azimuth multi-cannons and Sirius missiles. And if you've been watching Burr or any of the other content providers, you'll know that over 8,000 people responded to the call to defend Shinrarta Desra, so that's pretty phenomenal. After Shinrarta was defended, there was no second community goal to help restore it, and as it came under the rules of the war machine, it would have repaired itself in time. But Operation Ida didn't let that stop them and delivered almost all of the commodities needed to speed up the recovery of all 7 locations there, including Laurie Jameson, the engineer. 24 pilots landed 740 times across 4 days and 22 hours, and they logged 796 transactions. They delivered 562,854 tonnes of the 573,750 tonnes needed to completely restore the system, which is 98.1% of it. Ida gives special thanks to the Miners Corporation for providing the praseodymium, and they provided 22,635 tonnes of that, and the staff at Ida themselves provided 9,670 tonnes of meta-alloys. Commander Romars was one of the top 5 haulers. Well done, mate. Great to see you up there. He's dropped into our Discord many times, and he was a big part of our sampling team, Operation Kleenex, back when we were clearing all the alerts every week by sampling, so yeah, nice one. These 2 articles recognise the effort to defend and restore Shinrarta and tell us that, according to that old oxymoron, military intelligence, the Thargoid force was larger than a typical invasion force, saying they had considerable losses, with scout kills being particularly high. What this might mean is a subject of some discussion. Will it lead to easier clearance of the last 2 Titans, or maybe just Rajin for the rest of the time we'll need to destroy it? Does it hint at more surprise attacks? Or is it just a cryptic statement to keep us guessing? Either way, Shinrarta Desra is fully restored, all services are back online after being ruthlessly Amazoned by Ida, so fantastic work as always from our friends at the Galaxy's premier hauling faction. We now know more about the Powerplay update, and it's a lot of information. Commander Burr and others have done very good videos on the overall process and picked out a few points of discussion, but there are many more that you really need to read the questions and answers and watch the video from the FDev livestream to understand what we've got so far. If for any reason you haven't done that yet, the link's below with a Q&A and a video segment from the monthly stream where they go through it. Rather than doing my own version of the new Powerplay mechanics and trying to reinvent the wheel, I'm going to do what I've always done and say, okay, well, you've seen the big content providers like Burr and Galnet News Digest, and they've given you a very good brief on the gist of these new changes or events, a brief discussion of what's involved, and they've raised a few interesting talking points. Or they mention there's new logs to find or something like that, so now let's go and look at those logs and read them, or let's look a bit further at those events and the points raised, and we'll examine them in terms of the stories and the ongoing lore, the consequences for players going forward, and how players will use or take advantage of any new tools, techniques, or information they get from the game. So I decided to approach it from the opposite direction and look at what the current Power players think about it all, get their opinions on what they've seen so far, and their hopes and expectations for Powerplay 2. Let me start by presenting my own Powerplay credentials. I don't have any. I'm a Powerplay dunce. I know the BGS pretty well. I've done a lot of that for the Dart Wheel and Operation Witch Hunt, so these mechanics are familiar to me, but when it comes to Powerplay, what I know about it could be written on the back of a very small stamp. So I thought, let's go to the experts. And I asked a few existing power players about it, and I pulled together some comments from forums and Reddits and Discords. So this is an amalgamation of what they've said. In particular, I'd like to thank Commander Rubbernuke, great name, from the forum. They gave me some very generous feedback and kindly said they didn't care about being credited, but I'd like to do it anyway because their incredibly useful insight helped me make some sense of all of this. And without that, making this video would have been a lot more difficult, so thank you. Before we start on the analysis, the statement that there will be power play security in controlled systems that will attack you if they find out you're not aligned with them, but normal security won't attack you for that, that's caused a bit of concern. Hopefully it's just badly phrased and they actually mean if you're with a different power you'll be attacked, not just if you're not with them. Otherwise that would be very off-putting to casual or new pilots who perhaps want to check out some of these systems and the new content before deciding who to pledge to, if anyone. What if there was a community goal in one of those systems? You get blown away because you're not pledged to the power there? Or do you get a temporary pass if you signed up? That seems like a lot of hassle. So hopefully you're not going to get blown away just for not being with the power. It does seem a bit mad to introduce new content that you presumably want everyone to see and then insist people have to pledge to see it or die. So yeah, hoping that's just badly worded and not as severe as it sounds. That aside, what do the current power players have to say about Powerplay 2? Well, firstly, it helps to understand where Powerplay went wrong so that we can see the importance of what Powerplay 2 will fix. Back when Powerplay was new, it was presented as a visible action part of the game, and the BGS was literally in the background. It covered the day-to-day mechanics of running factions in a system, while Powerplay provided the wider action and roleplay. The BGS at the time was very rudimentary, and in Powerplay the fact that different actions used to have different results meant the roleplay had greater depth. But then Powerplay wasn't developed very much, and the BGS was. It was developed extensively, and now it's a pretty full-featured system. Well, except for faction expansion, which is still a bit clunky, and there's no visual representation on the galaxy map, but in many ways the BGS became what Powerplay should have become. Players were even encouraged to manipulate the BGS in order to make Powerplay triggers happen, which would then fortify or undermine a Powerplay system. So BGS work even ended up ruling Powerplay to some extent. And it was only made worse by the other thing which undermined Powerplay right from the start. And that was players being allowed to create factions. Not because that's a bad thing, but because logically any player in a faction is going to serve the faction first and any other power second. On top of that, the factions use the BGS, not Powerplay, to protect their territory and expand. So this, along with the greatly developed BGS itself, over time relegated Powerplay to a lesser and secondary activity. It's got a horrible inevitability about it when you put it like that, hasn't it? Anyway, power players are hopeful that the new version will restore some of that depth and importance that was lost during the BGS development, and will also be separated from the BGS, which they hope will solve at least 3 issues: using the BGS to affect Powerplay, having something else for players to be a part of as well as a faction, and restoring Powerplay so it's front and centre as the action and roleplay part of the game, as it was when it began. Looking back with hindsight, we can also see that ending the creation of new player factions was probably in preparation for this. So now we have some understanding of what went wrong and what we're looking at. We're going to look at 7 major problems with Powerplay 1 as it stands now, and how Powerplay 2 will address them. Problem number 1. Gameplay. If you weren't fighting other players in Powerplay 1, the gameplay consisted of 2 basic repetitive activities, either shooting wave after wave of NPCs, or hauling from A to B. With Powerplay 2 they've made everything count, so you can do whatever you enjoy doing. Certain powers may also have certain activities they prefer you to do, and if those are your favourite thing, that could even be a factor in choosing who to pledge to. This comment from one of the power players: "I want Powerplay 2 because it fixes the lack of variety in activities. It's why I stuck with BGS manipulation in the first place." Problem number 2. 5th column activity, or as the players call it, 5C. In Powerplay 1, because of how it worked, the most effective way to hurt a rival was to sign up to that rival and wreck it by expanding into rubbish systems. And you could do this because systems had a value. And if you expand into a system with a low value, what you're effectively doing is draining the power of the command capital's money and resources by forcing it to waste those resources on low value systems. Powerplay 2 gets rid of command capitals and system values, so any system is valid to expand into, and you can no longer hurt a power that way. Problem number 3. Simplicity and flexibility. Powerplay 1 could be difficult to get your head round and was pretty inflexible in how you did things. Powerplay 2 is more straightforward with many more options. In Powerplay 2 it's like stepping stones. You have an influence that can envelop nearby systems, and to expand you go there and you do a set amount of activity. To generate this bubble of influence, you improve systems to make them fortified or strongholds and then repeat the cycle. What's clever is that these new systems, called exploited systems, do not generate influence themselves, not until they become fortified or strongholds. Then they can generate more influence. Up until then, they can still be lost if the influence bubble around them is taken away by enemy action. Problem number 4. Decentralization, or rather, the lack of it. This is about the way that managing powers and how they succeed works best when for each power there's a large organised group or a collection of groups working together and the systems to work are carefully selected. But as we found out with the war, groups can get together and strategise and plan, but players outside those groups can easily make more work for you. Not intentionally, but well-meaning or not, it happens. Or perhaps the work they do would have been more effective if they'd done it somewhere else first. Now that's something we've had to deal with in the war, working around and adapting to what the casual players are doing. But beyond occasionally making a bit more work for us, it's not usually too bad. Nothing that we can't adapt and cope with. But in Powerplay 1 the situation is far worse. One wrong move can wreck a power permanently, because not many people really understand the mechanics needed to guide the powers outside of the organised groups, where the best way to manage a power has been to focus everybody's effort on the same places. Therefore, having activities going on outside a centralised effort is a nightmare, and this lack of decentralisation makes Powerplay at the moment a real headache. Powerplay 2 solves this problem because there's no downside to anything you do for your power, and no best or worst places to do it in. So now it will allow players either alone or in groups to do what they like, where they like, when they like, and how they like. The expansions will be largely independent of each other, and they'll no longer be hampered by the need to centralise the work or avoid low-value systems. This decentralisation of managing a power is a very welcome move. Centralised control of a power goes from being essential to survival in Powerplay 1 to both unnecessary and largely impossible in Powerplay 2. And this opens up the possibilities to everyone. Although obviously a large organised group of power supporters can still be more effective than piecemeal work by the same number of people, everyone has a chance to make a difference now. Problem number 5. Rewards. Although we don't know what most of the new ones will be yet, we do know they involve the Powerplay modules, and at least one problem with Powerplay 1 has been solved straight away. You no longer have to switch powers to get modules. You can get all of the Powerplay modules from a single power without having to switch. It's just that depending on which power you pledge to, you'll get them in a different order. So you can stay with a power and you can keep helping them, without worrying about missing out. As for some modules being highly sought after, like prismatics and pacifiers and packhounds, while others are considered a waste of time, mining lasers, perhaps some of these modules will get replaced with better ones, and of course, new powers can always bring new modules with them. Another thing that's gone is your merit score dropping over time, so that you gradually lose your reputation with the power unless you keep working for them. This was a major turn-off for a lot of people, so it's good to see it go. There's also an ongoing care package for anyone who reaches tier 10, and extra goodies for the top 10 performers. But there's also hints that the top 10 performers could be heavily targeted by enemy powers, so Be careful what you aim for unless you're willing to take on any risks that come with it. Problem number 6. Powerplay and the BGS are too connected. We touched on this in the intro, but it's not just that the BGS can be used to make Powerplay fortification or undermining triggers happen. Powerplay 1 has several links to the BGS where even the government type matters, which has caused friction with player factions, and it's also caused other strange things to happen, with powers like Hudson and Ashling having favourable government types which make no sense. Powerplay 2 appears to sever those links, so hopefully this means the BGS will be truly separate. Actions in Powerplay 2 will of course affect the BGS, but only in the same way as any activity normally would. Any special connection between them is gone. Problem number 7. NPCs and unidentified signal sources. In Powerplay 1, NPCs would just turn up without any real reason or context behind it, and signal sources had nothing specific that power players could use. Powerplay 2 has hinted at including new unidentified signal sources that will provide extra Powerplay flavour, along with the new stuff like strongholds, and we'll need to see how well these work. This one caught my eye because unidentified signal sources were also supposed to have more to them in the Thargoid War as well. There was a lot of talk about how maybe you'd find some valuable information or someone who was vital to the war effort, particularly by Darren before he left, but it never happened in the end. So if they are now going to do Powerplay specific things with signal sources, that's interesting. It could lead to any amount of new situations and opportunities for roleplay, and I only wish they'd done it for the war. Other things power players like include the following. Each stronghold has an exclusive fleet carrier clubhouse, which is a nice touch, and we're told that they'll be selling a good range of modules. There's gameplay for rivals. They can attack support ships in the system. The powers make visual changes, especially on foot in station concourses to reflect their expansion. Watch those billboards change as the powers take over, and maybe look out for the odd bit of graffiti. This is nice because the powers will have a visual impact that goes further than simply being a different colour on a galaxy map. Nakato Kane will be a new power in the Alliance, and there are more powers being added. The user interface looks much better. It's well laid out, it's easy to follow, and it's sensibly put together, giving everyone a much clearer picture of what they need to do. It feels as if they're making it easier for casual players as well as hardcore power players, which is great. You know, more inclusivity is always good. The rewards never go away, unless you unpledge. The merits you earn with a power don't decay over time, and people can just dip in and out when they want. It also fits in with making things like material gathering easier, with the ongoing care packages also giving materials, which is in line with the rewards we get for clearing war systems and the increased material rewards in general for missions. Mr. Colonia, Ian Doncaster himself, says, "From everything they've said and shown so far, I'm expecting it to be Powerplay 2 in the same way we got the Python 2. Some superficial similarities, but something new as well. So the absolute first prerequisite is to stop expecting Powerplay to work anything like Powerplay now. I expect Powerplay 2 to be more like Thargoid War, but competitive." This is a very good point, because with the Thargoid War machine itself, the first step to understanding how that worked was to stop thinking it was anything like the BGS. And the same goes for the new Powerplay machine. Understand it for what it is, don't waste time trying to compare it to something it's not. Only those who do this will really understand it and get the most from it, just as we did with the War Machine. In conclusion then, Powerplay 2 feels like an evolved fusion of BGS and Powerplay 1, essentially making Powerplay 2 a more active top layer of the BGS, and restoring its position as a visible action part of the various power struggles, with lots of new options for roleplay. But don't mistake the fusion for its component parts. Powerplay 2 is a new system with its own rules. The reward structure is better, the idea of care packages has gone down well, and we've even got visual impact on foot. It seems there's a lot to be happy about. The system is easier to use and understand, but still has a lot more depth, especially when it comes down to either rapid expansion or slower consolidation. Because only fortified systems and strongholds can project influence, And if they're lost, any dependent exploited systems are also lost. This is going to organically produce hotspots of activity, and it's going to keep people moving around. You won't be stuck in one place, and there'll be things going on everywhere. It's up to those in the power to decide what to do, and it adds to the strategy when you have to outguess your opponent. It seems they've used the Thargoid war machine and previous BGS data, no doubt, to good effect, and the new Powerplay is a promising combination of everything they've learned. Now we can see that the Thargoid war machine was the forerunner to the new Powerplay machine, as we suspected, and those of us fighting the war have been very much guinea pigs for testing these new automated processes, as we also suspected, identifying flaws and imbalances, which in turn has helped them to work out ways to expand the capabilities of these systems, which I don't mind too much, even though some of the changes have driven me mad with the extreme nature of them. Some of them have felt like using a sledgehammer to crack a nut, and at times they made sweeping changes where only a few minor ones were really necessary. But if it's helped them learn about how to better balance these things, then hopefully the frustration at times was worth it. And at the end of the day, for years we wanted the Thargoid war to move on from just attacking stations seemingly at random and neither side getting anywhere. How far they've actually moved the war on is debatable, but at least they gave us something new. Powerplay has been waiting even longer for something new, and if what we've done with the Thargoid war machine helps to get this other long-running part of the game the breath of fresh air that it desperately needs, then that's one positive for being lab rats. It's not going to be until people have played for a while that the full extent and all the consequences of these changes will come to light, and any imbalances or ways to game the system are found. But since a lot of it will be based on an automated system that will essentially be an enhanced and improved version of the Thargoid war machine, as and when things like that happen, what they've learned from the Thargoid war machine will hopefully help them monitor and rebalance the Powerplay 2 activities as necessary. And as long as they do a decent job of watching and tweaking the system as they go, with no silly swings from one extreme to the other, this is largely seen as a good thing by power players. We'll have to see how long it takes to expand or undermine systems as well. If it takes too long, people may grow tired of it, but if it's too quick, then they're going to be hard to defend. As always, what looks good on paper might not be good in practice, so some of these good aspects might be a nightmare to actually play. Hopefully again, this is where a bit of rebalancing will come in as and when it's needed. There are a lot of outstanding questions, of course, and a lot that hasn't been said yet, such as, will they allow any of the superpowers to really be affected that much? If they don't, then the addition of new powers like Nakato Kane won't change a great deal, she'll just be another power in the alliance. But there's a lot of potential if they do. No power can be completely eliminated, but it can be reduced to being virtually ineffective with enough work. What stories could that generate if a power is diminished or rises to dominance? For example, if it happens to any of the Powerplay leaders who are also leaders in the governments of the superpowers, like Felicia Winters or Edmund Mahon, could that in turn force an election, a rebellion, or even a civil war? The possibility is there not only for players to contribute to the lore, but also for some of the lore to practically write itself. October 22nd is the update, which will be called Ascendancy, and at the end of the month we're told we'll get something about the completely new feature that's been mentioned throughout the year, and in the time till the update drops it will be interesting to see if the stories and the news articles ramp up a bit, or stay relatively static until the big day. Stay safe, and thanks for watching.